Hello, my friend. Welcome to my channel. My name is Novella. Today is the 10th of the month, and that means I will do a top 10. Today is my top 10 of most comforting and soothing and uplifting books I've read lately. So, on the 10th place, I have Brood by Jackie Polzin. Brood is a very funny, uplifting, realistic book. I used to have a coop with chickens, a chicken coop, and we had a beautiful little wooden house, really handcrafted. It was really pretty, and it had a name above it. It was called Villa Poulette, and the chickens had a beautiful big space. There are a lot of people that live. It was bigger than a double apartment in New York. They had a lot of space. I had between 5 and 6 chickens. It could vary. And I loved it. I loved the experience of taking care of those chickens. I never expected it, but I loved it. And what I didn't expect was that all those chickens had all their own identity and their character and their quirks. And it was so much fun to discover that. But you also discover that keeping chickens is not that easy. You have foxes, you have to be aware that they don't get any diseases, the eggs, everything. You have to be aware that there's a lot more to it than you think. And that's what Jackie Polzin also discovered. And in that book, she describes everything that happens with those chickens and her and how it affects her life. It is an amazing story. It's funny. You will be happy afterwards. Then on the 9th place, it's a bit of an oddball, but I still wanted to put it in. It's Little by Edward Carey. Little is based on the story of Madame Tussaud. Madame Tussaud lost her parents very early on, and she was left with a man they hardly knew, actually. He made arms and legs and hands for people that were amputated, that had an amputation. And that's where she learns the trade. And then after a while, she meets the little niece, I believe, the little niece of the King of France at that time. And she moves into the Versailles. And there she has to sleep in a cupboard. But she befriends the little niece, and they practically grow up together. Then, of course, the revolution happens, and she has to flee to England, where she becomes later on Madame Tussaud. It is a comforting read. It is a bit gothic, a bit strange, little bit creepy, but not scary at all. And somewhere you feel her self-confidence, and you can sense her power and her joie de vivre. And it is an amazing story, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I really felt great after I've read it, so I highly recommend it. Now, on the 8th place, I have Fox and I by Catherine Raven. Now, Catherine Raven is from an abusive family. She comes from an abusive family. So she ran away quite early, and for a long time she lived in a car or on an industrial site, and then later on she camps in a forest, and when she is an adult, as soon as she can, She buys a piece of land somewhere in the woods and she builds a little house there. The only time she interacts with people is when she has to go to the city to teach. And then afterwards she comes back and she doesn't have any interaction with humans at all. After a while, where she gets up always very early in the morning. She always gets up very early in the morning, and by 4:30 she discovers that there's always a fox lurking around her house. And after a while, she kind of befriends the fox, and they have a connection. And this is what the story is about. It is a beautiful, loving, caring book, and you will adore it, I'm sure. It's also a great audiobook. I consumed it on Audible, I believe. And then on the 7th place is a classic. It's Emma by Jane Austen. It is a fun read. It is about a young girl who thinks she's a great matchmaker. She is the $1 million matchmaker of her time. That is the 1800s, the 19th century. So she tries to couple people, but it doesn't work at all because she doesn't get the nuances yet in life and how people feel, and she is really bad at reading emotions with other people. But it's funny, and it evokes a lot of happy, funny situations, and she's not ashamed for who she is, and yeah, it is fun. It is a fun read. So I advise you to read it slowly and, if you can, out loud, because then the text comes to life. It is really good. On the 6th place is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Malinda. This is a young adult book. It is set in the early 50s in San Francisco. A girl, I think her name was Lee. I'm sorry if I'm mistaken because it's a while. It has been a while since I've read it. She lives in Chinatown. She's 14, 15 years old. And the only time she interacts with other people that aren't Chinese is when she goes to school. And there she befriends a girl who is a bit boyish. And she discovers her own sexuality. She is a lesbian, and once they decide to go to the Telegraph Club. And there, of course, things go wrong quickly. They get discovered. They end up in the newspaper because, in the 50s, early 50s, homosexuality was a sin, not only a sin, but it was also dangerous. And you can have, as a woman, you could end up in jail or have lobotomy. Yeah. Although those things are spoken of, it still remains a hopeful and beautiful story. Pure and loving. Yeah, I loved it. Then on the 5th place, again with an animal, it's The Friend by Sigrid Nuñez. The Friend is about, I believe she's an author, I'm not sure, and she lives in a small apartment. At a certain point, her best friend asks her to take care of his dog because he has to go away somewhere. But the dog is a huge Great Dane, practically a cow. And she doesn't have anything with dogs. She doesn't even like that dog. And suddenly the friend dies. So she's stuck with that dog. And she has to decide to keep him or to find a solution for him. She starts to get attached to that dog. And that is so beautiful and so heartwarming because it is a book that shows you how pure the love between an animal and a human can be. It helps you also go through your grieving process. And yeah, it's a beautiful story. And it's a beautiful story, a hopeful story about grieving and how a dog can help you with that. Then on the fourth place, I have Out of Africa. This is not what you think. It is not a romance novel because of the book, of the movie with Robert Redford and Meryl Streep. There are no scenes with she gets her hair washed somewhere in the jungle by Robert Redford. No. Out of Africa is non-fiction, but is so beautiful, so well done. So Karen Blixen lives she's Danish, I believe, and she lives in Africa, and she really connects with the local people. She takes care of them, she gives them jobs, she's respected by them, and she respects them as people, not as a sort of curiosity or wildlife like so many Westerners did in those days. This is a beautiful read, and you learn so much about her and about the people. It is amazing. So, Out of Africa, written by Karen Blixen and Isak Dinesen. And then for the third place, I have an odd one also. It's Dear Friend and Gardener. It are letters between Christopher Lloyd and Beth Chatto. Christopher Lloyd and Beth Chatto are both gardeners, very well known and famous gardeners. They both live in England, but in total different areas where the plants and the birds are different. So they communicate with each other via letter, and they talk about their gardening, the troubles they have with certain plants, little things in life. It is beautiful, beautiful. You want to start gardening right away. I didn't, but if you like gardening, if you like plants, if you like flowers, you're gonna love this book. I give you one piece of advice though. Don't read it in one go. Read one chapter or one letter a day, and you will enjoy this. This will be such a bliss. Ideal to go to sleep. Ideal, I promise you. Such a beautiful book. Then on the second place is again with an animal. It is Bird Cottage by Eva Meijer. Eva Meijer is a Dutch author. Bird Cottage is about a woman who really lived in the 20th century, in the early 20th century. This woman was a professional violinist. She was really well known, very high respected. She performed in many orchestras. She traveled the world. But at a certain point, she was fed up with it, and she buys a little cottage somewhere in England, and she starts to interact with the birds there that live in and around her house. She takes notes and she interacts with them. It's so much fun, and you learn so much about those birds and how they are, and there are all little characters in that book. It is so uplifting and such a joy to read. I really adored it. It was a 5-star read for me. On the first place is a book by Vita Sackville-West. It is All Passion Spent. This book is phenomenal. It is about a woman way up in her 90s, and suddenly her husband dies after, 70 years of marriage. And the kids come together to decide, what we are going to do with that old tart. But she decides something completely different. So she goes to the seaside in England, rents a house there, and befriends everybody around. And actually, she lives the life she always wanted to live. And it's so beautifully done and with so much respect and with so much humor. You really realize that Vita Sackville-West is not only an excellent and intelligent author, she's also a great observer of the humankind. And that is so well done. So well done. This was a huge, huge, huge surprise for me. I knew about Sackville-West, I knew about her life and her gardening, but they always told me that her books they were very popular in her day, but that they weren't very good, but they are excellent. She was popular because she was excellent. And I'm glad that finally people are starting to rediscover her and especially her books. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Tomorrow I'm back with my Friday deep dive where I will talk about Anne Petrie, and on Sunday it's my Sunday coffee clutch. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.